Well, we're just gonna get through them.
Okay, Madam Chair, we are live and ready when you are.
Okay, thank you. All right, we were in the regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council, October 24th at 6:14. Roll call.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Ms. Swick here. Miss Payton is on her way. Miss Keithley. Here. Miss Sweat
Here.
and Miss Rosa, Miss
Here.
Rojas. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Pledge of Allegiance again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thanks. Let's see. Excuse absences. We have our mayor who is excused. Item D, agenda approval.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second that.
All those in favor? Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick. Aye. Payton on her way. Keithley,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas, aye. Okay, agenda is approved. Item E, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and one vote. A council member may request to remove an item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Item 1 are the minutes from October 10th, 2022. Ordinance introduction A, ordinance 23-10, resolution 23-14, and resolution 23-15. What's the wishes of the council? Oh, Madam Clerk, you had a comment for us.
Yes, if I may, Madam Chair, there was a error in the minutes of October 10th, 2022. They did not include the individuals who made the motion and second for the adjournment of the meeting. And that was Rojas and Nathan. So if it's okay with council, I can include that once the minutes are approved.
All right, thank you. Okay, council, motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read tonight.
Second. All right. All those in favor, Kennedy? Oh, sorry.
So sorry to interrupt. Did you read the two resolutions as well under the consent?
Yep,
You
Yep,
did? Okay,
yep. I didn't read the full thing, just gave the resolution numbers.
okay. That's okay for the record, City Clerk?
It's better if they're read.
Red,
for
would you
the
read them out,
record.
please?
Sure. So for the consent agenda, as stated, it's the minutes of the regular meeting, October 10th, 2022. And then ordinance introduction, ordinance 23-10, and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code Title 6, Purchasing and Contracts, Section 6.80, 6.8.100E, 6.8.110E, 6.18.150, and section 6.18190 through 6.18200. Recommended public hearing November 14th, 2022. And then resolutions, there's resolution 2314, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia setting regional priorities for Seldovia as established through partnership between the Seldovia Village Tribe and the City of Seldovia. And resolution 2315, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia supporting full funding at $8,236,815 for the State of Alaska Municipal Harbor Facility Grant Program in the FY 2024 state capital budget.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, do we have a motion? Can't remember if we had a motion and a second.
We did have a motion and a second.
Okay, all right. All those in favor, Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick? Aye. Payton, not here yet. Keithley?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas, aye. Motion passed for the consent agenda. Item F, mayoral proclamations. We have none. Public presentations for items not on the agenda with a 10-minute presenter time. Anyone do we have, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, we're on public prior notice. Okay. And now for item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Public has 3 minutes each.
We do have a hand, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Hi, this is Laurel Hiltz. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Wanted to share that Seldovia Village Tribe will be hosting a Halloween carnival this weekend for the kids and for the community. And we're anticipating for that to be Friday night from 5 to 7 p.m. We're waiting to hear if there's any chance some basketball games might get scheduled. And if so, we'll let everybody know. But be looking forward to that. That's for everybody to come out and enjoy. It'll be at the Seldovia Conference Center indoors. And we'll also have a lot of games and activities outdoors too. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then just wanted to make a note. I had the privilege of getting to travel out of state and missed the last meeting. So then I was listening to it on YouTube, and you guys had a long meeting and workshop and then a long meeting. And as the meeting went on, you could tell that it was getting harder and a lot to really plow through. But my observation towards the end of the meeting was that eventually the meeting kind of reached a point of having a lack of decorum. And I felt for every council member that was trying to share or express their thoughts on issues that maybe were told that their thoughts weren't relevant, or they were directly spoken over by other council members and such. And it was just it was uncomfortable. And having attended countless number of meetings, I certainly have seen times when things become a little bit uncomfortable, but it was just an overall loss of decorum. And so just wanted to just bring forward just encouragement that if we stay within the framework, and unfortunately the mayor's not here to hear this as well, but if we stay inside of the framework of Robert's Rules of Order, then I think that helps the process quite a bit. And if a council member ever feels that they are trying to have a voice and they are not being given that opportunity, whether by the person chairing the meeting or by other council members stepping over what they're trying to say, I would encourage you to utilize Robert's rules, either by calling for a point of order, or there's a few other terms and a few other words, language that can be used. But I think that as individual council members, you have the authority to put a pause to those kind of ruckuses that I observed in the last meeting. So that's just my encouragement to the group as a whole. And it's a lot of work to do what you do. It takes a lot of homework. And I think if the homework is done, I think that makes the meetings much more effective. But sometimes it does seem that you're having to workshop it right there. And then if people's emotions or just fatigue get involved, then it just gets painful. So that's just my encouragement. And I've been there, done it myself. So thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Okay. Item I, Committee Advisory Board Reports. Welcome, Congress, or our Harmony, welcome, you made it. Committee or Advisory Board Reports, we have anything tonight? Committees?
Nothing for committee or advisory board reports, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Okay, item J, Administrative Reports. Rachel, take that over.
You bet. So Finance Officer Yeager provided a report at the last meeting, so she won't be here to present the quarterly since she provided that information to the council last meeting. And we do have our Chief of Police in attendance. So if Chief Hawkins, you'd like to just give a summary of the report to the council?
I think the one that was provided is the quarterly one. And so it's just a synopsis of the last 3 months, which you guys have had over the couple months. So really, if you guys have any questions for me, I'm willing to answer anything that you guys have read up on. So
Does anyone have a question for our police chief? At this time? Hey, was there anything you want to report to us that's maybe not on there, or how things are going?
going good so far. Lots of fingerprints going on lately because we got to the school with the school and the preschool. But other than that, that's all good. It's going
Okay.
good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then it looks like up next we have our harbor master report. And I can just try to give a brief overview of what she provided the council. It looks like our harbor master has been doing winterization, and that water was shut off on the floats October 13th. And of course, there's a lot of work that needs to do before the snow hits. And so there is always, though, potable water at the harbor master office. There's still some things that need to be put away before the winter. The RV park has been cleared out. Most of the burned out light bulbs on the pedestals have been replaced. And there wasn't damage to the floats as a result of the storm that blew off the awning at the Fuel and Lube building. But I do know that the roof lost some shingles. And then there are some pedestals that need to be fixed. And I believe even a safety ring cabinet got the brunt of the wind on that day. Jackaloff, of course, was a concern because the storm occurred during high tide, and that leads to a threat of flooding of the parking lot. And so Layla did monitor them over the weekend. And then she also attended a conference. And in the conference, they talked about the municipal harbor grant, which the consent agenda had a resolution for, that council supported the full funding for. And of course, it was at that conference that Layla received Harbor Master of the Year award, which the community showed outpouring support for on Facebook. And the city did receive a call from KBBI that's hoping to do a radio story on the award. And I believe Councilmember Rojas had asked for a photo with Layla and her awards, and she's willing to oblige. So
Okay, good.
hopefully that'll be in the works as well. And then in front of the harbor master office, there are the gardens. We had a volunteer come to help maintain those gardens in front of the office. And then she's doing normal tasks for this time of the year. And upcoming, we have snow blower maintenance, working on the harbor skiff, cart maintenance this upcoming spring, and finishing light bulb replacements and getting ready for darkness. And just to give a shout out to Layla, because she does so many things that are not harbor related. The cemetery grant and working to help the community with the Soldovia Cemetery has been spent out. So that's a success to see the improvements that Rasmussen brought to the community. And then she doesn't have it in here, but of course she does water backup operations, water treatment plant backup operations for the city. And then also helped when our police chief was out sick and coordinating with the troopers who visited Soldovia. And we have a trooper, Sergeant Cox, who has been with the state of Alaska for 25 years. And we got to celebrate him when he was in Soldovia. And there's more items on her report, but I hope that provides a summary. And if you want a better view of the award that she received, you can scroll to page 32 and check it out.
All right, thank you.
And then up next, if there aren't any questions on the harbor master report, we have operator Cameron on to go over the maintenance and public works report, which is on page 33 in your packet.
Jordan, if you're there, if you want to give us a little overview of what's going on with Public Works, besides you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, it's business as usual in the fall. We're putting away stuff and getting things ready for snow to be removed. Wade Hall has been working on getting the flue buildings roofs finished up. Those have been on kind of an ongoing deal, and he's pretty much has that done. And then been some a lot of water turn-offs and water repairs, stuff going on lately. And So one of the great things to report is our water usage at the city is record low. I think Saturday's meter distribution reading was 32,002 gallons. That's just, it's unprecedented. Nobody's known of any lower numbers than that in recent history. And that's going to be a real benefit to the city. It's going to save us a lot of money in chemicals. And of course, during the summer, that's going to, if we could maintain low consumption during the summer season, we might be able to, minimize any of that concern that of there being a water shortage for the city. So that's kind of a good thing. We've had Village Safe Water and DEC come along and have a look at our sewer system. Have a little tour, have a look at our septic tank and our lift stations and some of the ins and outs of that system. And hopefully they can come up with a great plan for their sewer renovation, rebuild, or whatever you want to call it. That was a good visit, meeting those folks and showing them around. We've done some rebuilding on repairs and stuff on lift stations lately, and getting them back into full working order, which is a relief. The other things of fall related are kind of ongoing. We're waiting for supplies, winter supplies, tire chains, and that kind of stuff to come. Things have been kind of ordered late, but they'll be here so we can use them. Hopefully the new grader shows up this winter so we can use it too. But otherwise, things are kind of in that fall roundup. We're putting away some of the stuff for the Parks and Rec kind of stuff, benches and all that, and making sure they're stowed away and rocks are pushed where they need to be. And so we're in pretty good shape otherwise. Any questions?
Council have any questions for Jordan? Harmony, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions, but it looks pretty good out there. I noticed that the lot behind the value added building looks pretty tidied up. Good job, guys.
Jordan, what do you contribute? That's incredible, 36 or 34,000 gallons a day. That is incredible for Sylvania. What do you contribute that to? Have we
We had
found the leaks?
Yeah, we had a tremendous leak on Harborview that was 40-some thousand gallons a day. And if it wasn't for Hugh Smith's acute hearing, we probably wouldn't have known about it till it actually come spurting out of the ground, and was running and flooding down Main Street a couple weeks ago. And it's one of those deals where it's maintenance kind of like to remind people that when they can hear water running or roaring sounds coming from their pipes in their house, that they should let the public works folks know, and maintenance or admin at the city, that that they can hear something that's not normal coming through their pipe or their pipes in their houses, or maybe it's normal and it's been doing it for a long time, but we could help investigate and make sure there are no leaks out in the street or on the property, and try to conserve water. And we went the repair at the Harborview residence cut our water consumption almost in half.
Wow. So had it been leaking a long time? Is that the summary of that?
Yeah,
You think?
that's what we think. And I'm kind of skeptical that it was missed during leak detection. It was kind of ongoing for the last 2 years, but it's they grow, they start small and they grow over time, and possibly that one's been leaking quite a bit. The ARWA guys had detected sounds in that area before and couldn't find the leak. So it could have been leaking a long time, and it's just got to the point where it finally daylighted. And that's the best case scenario for us in maintenance is when it comes spurting out of the ground, it's a lot easier to find.
Right.
And,
And so was that, oh, I'm sorry, Jordan, was that on city property or was that on private property? The leak, did you determine?
It was in the residence. It was in the garden
Okay.
at the old house there. And the only thing it's kind of a special circumstance for that house is the key box is not on the property. And one of the things you guys might be familiar with is usually we're responsible between the edge of the property and the house. And which is this house, since it has the curb stop is on the opposite side of the property, kind of makes for an interesting situation. If you could still consider it the edge of the property, then we're responsible to the curb stop, the shut off of the property owner. And it was an interesting special service on that house. Who knows why it was configured that way, but hopefully in the near future we can redo that service so that it's configured with the key box on the property on the right side of the road, and modern materials and whatnot. So but at this point it's not leaking, so everybody, both parties are happy.
Excellent.
And-
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question or comment for Jordan?
I just
Yep.
have one comment to support Public Works. Anyone that you see, or can you help spread the word, council, of trimming brush out of the right of way? That would be so appreciated. And if you can see your friends or just your neighbors, if you see them out and say, hey, it looks like that bush is getting into the street, that would really help because it hurts the equipment and it makes for some potential hazards, driving hazards. Would be great if you could help us get people to trim their limbs.
Perfect. Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Jordan. Do you have anything else for us?
No, that's it. I'm glad that Rachel mentioned the right of way clearing her, and some of it's not just right of way. It's, the branches that hang off onto the out into the, what appears to be the road. When the area is covered in snow, what appears to be the road is anything that we don't get snagged up on. And one of our purposes is to try to remove the snow so that we can travel down the roads and without any obstructions. And when people's spruce tree limbs and stuff are hanging out there, you can't exactly do a good job or an efficient job when there's spruce trees and all their limbs and all the other stuff from either decorative trees or just trees that are in or near the right of way. So hopefully some people will take care of their own, but at some point we might have to come and give them a helping hand and trim what's hanging out into the right of way, and it'll help snow removal process in the winter and people being able to drive. It's just a good thing. It helps the town look better when there's not trees hanging in the road.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jordan. Anything else, Rachel? Okay. Let's move on to item K, public hearings, number 1. K1, ordinance 23-09, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code Section 13-02-020 definitions, Section 13-04-055, requiring penalty, Chapter 13.06 sewer connections, repealing Chapter 13.08 side sewers, and amending Section 13.24.010 for sewage blockage. Introduced 10/10 of 2022. City Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this came about due to recent conversation in-house with staff that we did not have an exclusive nature of service language, or there was not language for exclusive nature of service for sewer lines in Title 13, but there was for water. So on page 40 of your packet, The language for 13060020 exclusive nature of service. Sewer connections to city water sewer mains shall be installed only by the city or the city's authorized contractor or agent, and then only upon payment of fees as prescribed by the city and as set forth in the schedule of fees and charges, which is the same language that we also use for our water services, was incorporated. During this incorporation, though, we have spent a really long time in discussion in the city office, between the clerk's office, the city manager's office, public works office, about the fact that there are multiple, there are multiple terms for the same item in this code. And for instance, in our definitions, there are two definitions for a sewer service, and there are two definitions for a side sewer. And if you read through the code, there are places where the sewer is referred to as an extension and a connection, which those ones make a little bit more sense. I mean, it all fits, but there's so much nomenclature in here that we've had a lot of discussions on what does that mean. So in discussion with our representative from ARWA and how they call items, or what they call items, and in reviewing other municipalities' codes like the city of Palmer, the city of Homer, the city of North Pole, all have really decent codes for their utilities. We took this moment to also just clean up the language and have one set of terminology for a sewer connection line, and that is a sewer connection line. There is a definition for an off-site sewer connection line and an on-site sewer connection line that's included, but basically we're removing side sewer because that even though you Google it and it'll show a side sewer, or you can hear it sometimes called as a private lateral sewer or a sewer extension, all of those terminology come down to the fact that it's the connection line from the property to the main. And so to save us from having 3 or 4 different terms for the one type of service, it's now recommended as it's written in this ordinance. It's just the sewer connection line, and there's an offsite and there's an onsite, but that's what it is. And so it removes this section on side sewer and it incorporates it into the section on sewer connections, which is already in there. Cleans it up a lot, because on top of that, there was also parts in the sewer connection section that spoke to the sewer extension, and parts in the sewer extension that spoke to the sewer connection. So now it's just one terminology for the whole service. And that is the recommendation there.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Nice job on all the information you put here and these diagrams, because this is really helpful that people know how the water extensions inside sewers and how they work and property lines. Wonderful get together here. Okay, council. Comments on ordinance 23-09. Any comments?
I think I'm okay with it. The first couple of times I read it, I didn't really understand it, but I think it's good.
Thank you. Anyone else? It's a great housekeeping situation, clearing up things. I know it's been confusing for the city office to be able to determine all the words and the descriptions and the names for different things. So I'm glad to see this be very helpful. If there's no other questions or Ashley, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry. Nope. Okay. If there's council has nothing to say, then we will move on to the public. If the public has anything to say about ordinance 23-09.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to the council for action on ordinance 23-09. Be a motion, someone?
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 23-09. Do I need to read the full thing? Nope.
No.
Okay.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 23-09. Roll call.
Kennedy,
Here. Aye.
Zwick,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay, going on to item K. Oh, no, we don't have any more K. L, unfinished business. We have nothing, but we have M1, new business. Resolution 23-16. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia entering into a 30-year lease agreement with the state of Alaska, also known as ADL 232203, for the tideland surrounding and the underneath Jackaloff Bay dock. City manager.
Thank you, Chair Rojas. So as we learned from the state, I believe at the last meeting or the meeting before, there was a question from the council that spoke to what if the city wasn't ready to enter into a lease at this time, given potential liabilities for the tidelands. And the state basically shared that if the city didn't wish to enter into a lease at this time, that they would need a reclamation plan from the city, that the lease proceedings would stop and the city would need to remove the dock and the pilings out of the state tidelands. And so this resolution is before the council today. And I did share with the state that council would be discussing this matter today, but if council still needs more information, given the amount of time that the city's put into figuring out Jackaloff Bay dock, you can always delay making a decision on the lease. But before you, and it's summarized in the resolution on page 48, it just states that the city assumed ownership of the dock in 2008. And the dock is on state tidelands, but there's no agreement in place for the city to use the tidelands for the dock. And if the city elected not to pursue the lease per the state, the city would forfeit their interest in the lease, be required to submit the reclamation plan and remove all existing infrastructure. And so the city right now at this time is trying to figure out ways to afford the dock, afford replacing the dock, because there's interest so far from the council in seeing the city maintain Jackaloff Bay dock, or maybe in the future find somebody else on behalf of the city to maintain the dock out there. So this resolution is stating that it is in the Seldovia City Council finds that it is in the city's best interest to enter into the lease with the state so that the current dock can remain in place on state tidelands. And in trying to think through amending the lease, or if council wanted to think through a shorter term, because that's 30 years. Term 30 modification in the agreement with the state provides the city with the opportunity to amend the lease with the state as long as both parties are in agreement. This term provides the city with an opportunity to propose amendments that may reduce the term of the lease, as well as explore options such as lease termination in the future. So let's just say Seldovia City Council says, yes, it's in the city's best interest to enter into this 30-year lease at this time. But then after trying to get funding from RAISE and trying to get funding from the state through their rural dock and barge landing program, there's just no funding out there and the condition of the dock is deteriorating. The city could work with the state to say, hey, we've realized that we're going to pull the dock, or we want to shorten the length of the lease, or we want to figure out a different arrangement with the state for the dock. So the lease with the state does give that ability to modify the terms. One thing that I haven't gotten the state's input on yet is the lease agreement at this time as it's written requires the city to have insurance on the dock, and we have the general liability insurance up to 27 feet. So I will share that with the state, but there is a chance that they may want something additional. And I'm not sure at this time if that will be something that the city will need to consider. So this may come before the council in the future. But at this time, we do at least meet general liability. And I think that this is something that the council could consider this evening or at a future date. And again, the reason why this is coming before the council is because the city had a entry authorization from the state to conduct an appraisal. That entry authorization expired, plus the city already got the appraisal. So now the state's like, okay, city, ready, because you've done all the things and we're willing. We went out for public comment and we find it's in the state's best interest to enter into this agreement with the city. So, you know, we're ready if you're ready. So it's more a question for the council, how you're feeling at this time, knowing that there, as long as the state agrees, is the potential to amend the lease in the future. And as a side note, and I just want to make sure I don't miss it, and the manager's report as an enclosure is an email that I exchanged with the state's leasing specialist, asking about the 2-year extension for the Uplands lease that's currently in place with another tenant, the Kitty B Mills mining estate. And the state hasn't done it yet, but according to DNR, it looks like they will be moving ahead with a 2-year extension of that lease. So if you remember, the Uplands lease was set to expire November of this year, but the state through statute has the ability to do an automatic 2-year extension. So it does look like the state will be doing that. So I don't think the city will have an answer about next steps concerning the Uplands for at least another year, a year and a half, if I had to take a guess. Thank you so much.
The lease of $1,280, is that set in stone for 30 years?
Yeah, with the ability.
Sorry,
Oh.
my mic wasn't on, I'm sorry. The question I had for the city manager was, the lease is $1,280 annually. Is that for the 30 years or, do you know? I didn't see it.
So on page 50 of the lease, it states compensation the lessee shall pay to the lessor. Compensation as follows, $1,280 due on or before August 1st. And the city has been paying that in the form of the entry authorization. We were treating that as though it was the lease. And then section B states that lease compensation is subject to adjustment by the lessor at the commencement of the 6th year of the term and every 5th year thereafter. So, you know, in 2028, we could see the first one, and then in 2032, the second adjustment, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Council, comments on resolution 23-016.
Yeah,
Bobby, go ahead.
I have a question. So like I said at the last time we discussed this, I find it not very nice of the state to all of a sudden tell us this with the Tidelands, that apparently we didn't know that before, correct? That's what you had said.
Well, through the chair, the state has been, and I wasn't here, but I believe the city has had discussions with the state about how we didn't get the right to use the Tidelands, because that's the reason why the city can't charge fees. So the
Right,
city's been
right.
aware. It's just, you know, the state's been kind of saying, okay, we need to button this up. The city had an interest too in buttoning it up so that we could charge fees for the use of the dock.
Right.
So that's what kind of brought us here. But it does seem to be an administrative, something administrative that got overlooked when the state transferred its interests
By
of the
us
dock
or
to the
them.
city.
Don't know. Okay.
Hard to say.
Anyway, I lost my train of thought now. Oh, if we do get the lease for this Tidelands, which obviously we'll probably have to do now, will that affect future outcome of keeping the physical harbor or not? I mean, if we choose to go ahead and dismantle the harbor for whatever reason, you know, for the time being, that won't affect us keeping the Tidelands. Will it?
That's a great question. The lease, I believe that's part of the justification for giving the city the lease, is understanding that the dock is there, but I can ask that question to the state and get back to you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Oh,
Sorry,
yeah,
just
you bet.
one
Holly.
more. So then if that is a consideration, then we'll be locked into keeping Jackaloff Dock. If they say you can't keep the tidelands if you dismantle the dock. So we would have to keep the dock is where it would stand then.
Through the chair, the impression that I've gotten from the state is very much that they are concerned about safety and navigatable waters. So if the city thought that the current dock was in jeopardy or ability of harming mariners, I don't think that the city or the state, I'm just speaking on assumption here, would terminate the Tidelands lease that the city has with the state if the city is proactively trying to address safety concerns. So if the city in the future had a plan, say they were like, okay, we're gonna remove the dock, but in X amount of years, we're hoping to replace it. Then the city could share that with the state. I think it's a conversation, but I can get back to you on.
Yeah, I think we should clarify that
You
and
bet.
then maybe could we put that in the lease? Not that I don't trust the state of Alaska, of course.
So just to go on that, use of leasehold prior to execution of this lease and commencing use or development of the leasehold. This is on page 50, section 4 of the lease. The lessee shall submit a development plan for the leasehold to the lessor and obtain the lessor's approval of the plan. And so if you go to page 66, that is the start of the city's development plan. So that is what the city submitted to the state back in 2017 under City Manager Larson. And so that's what the state has essentially granted the city's lease for. So if I'm assuming here, but again, can't answer that question definitively, Councilmember Sweat. If the city submits a different development plan, that would be something that the state will review and consider in regards to this lease.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Anyone else?
I think that was a good point you made, Bobby. And so finding out, get clarification. I think the state would be workable with us if we determined the safety of the dock was questionable and we ended up pulling out the apparatuses out there. But good question, Bobby. Anyone else?
I do have.
Yes,
Madam
go ahead.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Would the state consider a shorter term lease? Do you have any idea?
It's something that, so again, if the council wants to delay because there's something like, hey, we don't want to do 30 years, we want to do.
Well, I
certain
certainly wouldn't make that I just wonder, where we're going here. And there's so many unknowns. So many unknowns, and I'm sure we could get out of your lease, if I have time to read this completely through. But I wonder what the other council members thinks. I would be much more comfortable with a 10-year. Just until we see what happens here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Bobby.
I have one more comment. I think I kind of agree with John, except that I guess you're going to have to ask that question. Could we get this lease for less than 30 years? Only because it is such an unknown and we don't know what our finances are going to be like in a few years. And is it going to be, are we going to be able to get a grant? Are we going to be able to do whatever we can to fix up that dock? Because that's what's going to happen. We're going to be forced to do something. So, all those things, yeah. We need to take that all into consideration and get those questions answered before I think we can make a decision.
You bet. So through the chair,
Yes.
I'm hearing that there could be an interest in postponing, and it's not in here, but I believe it's in the entry authorization document. I want to say the city even had interest in considering or proposing to the state a 50-year lease in the past. So I was just looking through here to see if there was a mention of the term. when city manager Larson submitted this development plan to the state, and I don't see it. But
Oh, go ahead.
but we can postpone this discussion, and I can check in with the state to say, would you be open to a 10-year lease instead, and see if they were interested in 10-year, asking them what our current rate, what would happen with our rate, because then that opens up the opportunity where the state could come back to the city and say, okay, you need to do another appraisal.
Mhm.
And the appraisal was $13,000. So I know
Right.
that there's some variability there, which is where I do believe the city has the ability to amend the length of the term as
Yeah.
long as the state was in agreement. And I think same thing if the city told the state, we're pulling this thing and we're no longer interested, I could see the state being open to the termination of the lease as well. Very much like if the city said, hey, we want to remove
Yeah.
it, but we want to keep the lease, I could see the state being like, okay, let's see your development plan and we'll work with you.
Well, try to find out all that information if you can.
You bet.
It seems like the fifth whereas, is that where if they accept in resolution 23-16, the whereas the fifth one, terms of 30, that's negotiating and amending. That's kind of taking care of what we're discussing, isn't it?
That is, yes, that is a call out to the lease document itself.
Mhm.
So if you go to page 56 of the packet, it says modification, this lease may be modified or amended only by a document signed by both parties. Any purported amendment or modification has no legal effect until placed in writing and signed by both parties.
Yeah.
And if council will just bear with me, I know that we have the entry authorization on our website, so I'm just going to pull it up to see if I can find the mention of the term, how the 30-year term was discussed. I think that's pretty standard for leases, is a
Mhm.
30-year term.
Any comments from council members while our city manager is looking up the information?
Just the one that note in the whereas, that is our out. I appreciate you pointing that out. I didn't see that. So I believe you could probably get out of the lease in a shorter term if it didn't work in our favor, but
Right, and avoid the $13,000 or $15,000.
well, we certainly wouldn't want to do that again, and I certainly wouldn't want to open that can of worms.
Mhm.
I just wonder, If-
What time frame do we have on this? If the council would like to go for another meeting, what is our time frame of submitting?
I don't have a specific deadline from the state, but I
Okay.
do think that they're interested in
They want to get an answer. They
moving
want
forward
something.
because
Okay.
the entry authorization expired. So technically, to use the T word, the city's trespassing on the tidelands as a result of not having
right,
the agreement in place.
Did Joe Levesque, did he look at this resolution 23-16?
He did not.
Are you still looking up?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go to the public meeting moment then.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna find it as quickly as I want, so I can look into that as well about the 30-year term and how that came to be. And is there general consensus of delaying this to the next meeting, this topic?
I believe so. I'm not sure. I heard from the council members at the far end.
Yeah, I can go either way. I would hate to think that we won't be using it in 30 years. I also don't, feel like 10 years goes by fast sometimes, and how much are you really gonna get done? I don't know. To have to go through, if we have to go through and get resurveyed or whatever at that time. Seems like it might be smarter to sign a longer one and hope that if things don't work out, we can bow out gracefully, but yeah, I'm not opposed to either way, I guess.
Waiting for 2 weeks from now, bring it again.
Yeah,
If we need more questions. Harmony, did you have a comment on it?
I feel the same way. I think this is a pretty straightforward agreement. I like the language. It's very easy for the lay to understand. But I feel the same as Jen. I think that this is something that we know the community wants, and something that we know that the council wants to see continue to exist. I think that 30 years will go by relatively quick. And that from what I understand, from what I've read in this, there are ways for us to, bow out gracefully if we needed to. But at this point, we may as well just wait until we have all of our questions clarified. The two questions that on the table are, can we sign for shorter, and do we have a bow out? Are those the questions that we're asking?
City manager, if you want to address that, please.
The two questions that I have so far are, if the city removes Jackaloff Bay Dock, can the city maintain the Tidelands lease?
Mhm.
And
Right.
then can we do a shorter term than 30 years?
And then we also, we're also able to sublease, correct, with the state? I feel like that's a question we already asked. We already know.
Yes, we can sublease with the state's written approval.
Ashley, did you have something for us? Question or comment?
Oh, I was just agreeing that we can sublease. I think there's a fee, like to say 25% or something. I remember reading if we do sublease. But other than that, I'm also in the agreement. I think it's kind of a tough situation in the fact that it's definitely something that's needed, but without knowing the timeline or where the money is going to come from to do any of the needed work puts us in a little bit of a hard place. But I agree with Councilmember Swick that it is something that most of us in the community rely a lot on. And so we might just have to cross our fingers and push it as one of those priorities as we have it, to get that infrastructure fixed up and in place so that we can continue to use it and also not be in a hard place with the state and our lease.
Okay, thank you. And city manager, found what you're looking for.
Yeah, so
Okay.
thank you, Chair Rojas. Just to share with the council, in the preliminary decision that the state issued for the city regarding the request to lease, apparently the city requested a 55-year lease for 2.077 acres of tidelands. And so the state came back and said 30 years. So it was the city that initiated the length of the term. So I think that was the state's way of saying, and I agree, long-term leases that are that length. I mean, I think 30 years is a good length of time. So I can see why the state said no to 55, but yes to 30. So does council at this time, even though the city was the one that requested the 55 years, does council still want to consider the ability to shorten the term, or do you want to stick to 30?
Ms. Rojas.
Yes, go ahead.
In light of the correction here, whereas term 30 modification provides the city the opportunity to amend the lease. It's pretty straightforward there. I don't need a question answered. I'm good. So, and I'm good with moving on tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, I just have, as far as Bobby's concerned about, I don't think they would pull the lease from us if we pulled the dock. Cause that access is always going to be there to the water. It just, and even who was it that was saying, who was it? I was saying if we pulled it out and left it there, we'd still be eligible for funding. So it all seems like it's going to all stay in place. I don't remember who that was that told us that.
I asked the question, if we pulled infrastructure, would we lose right of way? And then it was Campbell who went down that line of communication, and we do not lose access. It will always be a right of way, but also it will not, according to the communication at the time, does not affect our lease so long as we are pursuing infrastructure grant term.
Right. Cause there was talk of,
Yeah, so what we're doing is leasing that and taking over the ownership of the tidelands and taking on the fiscal responsibility of, oil spills and things that go under. But we've asked all these questions. We've asked them, what does it mean? We know that what exists out there is not a long-term piece of wood. You know, what's going to happen if we sign this and have to pull it tomorrow without funding? And the state knows what state the infrastructure is in. And I think that we have been talking about this since I got on council, before we got on council. I'm comfortable with this agreement, knowing what we have and what we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, well, I don't want to hold anything up and I'm not going to hold anything up, but I'm also a pessimist, as you guys well know. And I want a couple questions still answered. Yeah, we've thrown this around 150 times and there's always questions, always questions. And I know we already have one lease in place that's, we're not all particularly happy about, but there's not a thing we can do about it. So, and I just don't want to see us get in that position again. There's no reason for it. So I don't want to hold up anything, but I'd like to have that question answered.
And Madam Chair,
go ahead.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I think Councilmember Swick, you're remembering Tier 1 funding. So the Harbor Master confirmed that the city would still be eligible for Tier 1 funding. We confirmed that with the state if the dock was removed. I think that removing the dock, as long as it was a part of a development plan approved by the state, I think it is something that they would consider. And just reading over the lease again, I think something that I should share with the council that could be an interesting turn of events is, let's say the state condemns the dock. Then they have the ability to take the lease. And let me just share this with you, because this is also a possibility given the condition of the dock. Not to say that that's something that I think the state is willing to do. But if it becomes a safety hazard and the city is unable to address the issue, the lease does say that the state can condemn the leasehold or the improvements, and they can take the entire leasehold or take a part of it, and that the lessor is entitled to the condemnation proceeds, except that the lessee will be paid the portion of any proceeds attributed to the fair market value. So if the state sells it, but I'm assuming that if there's fees incurred by the state to remove the leasehold, then the lessee would be responsible for covering those costs. So I do think that's something important to talk about, but it's already out there. That's already a possibility, considering the city is on the hook as the owner of the dock. So I just think that that's another thing to address. And yes, Councilmember Payton, the DOT commissioner, as well as Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski's staff have walked the plank, so to speak, of Jackaloff Bay Dock and are aware of the condition and have expressed support of the city's pursuit of funding, even saying it's eligible for certain types of funding. So I think it's realistic, but can the city receive that funding in time? Because the engineer, Turnagain Marine, had a condition survey that said there was 3 to 5 years of life remaining, but most likely less than 3. And that was back in the fall of 2021. So now we've got 1 year under our belt. And as you heard in the Harbor Master's report, given that October storm, she had concerns over the dock. So it is a very realistic concern for the city regarding the condition of the dock. However, sorry to add one more thing. The state said if we didn't enter into this lease, then they would terminate these lease proceedings, require a reclamation plan, and the city would remove the dock. So by the city accepting this lease, it's basically the council saying, yes, on behalf of the community or the city, it's in the city's best interest to still maintain the dock.
Thank you. Any more comments from council? Otherwise, we'll go to the public. And then we'll come back to council. Is there anyone in the public that would like to talk about Resolution 23-16? Madam Clerk.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
we'll come back to council. What actions would you like to take? Do we feel like we need to put this off until the next meeting? Could you refresh the 3 questions that you have to to check and Bobby, if these are the three that, or any of these that you still want information on.
So I had two questions
questions.
written down. If the city removes the dock, can the city maintain the Tidelands lease with the state? And is it possible for the city to consider a shorter term than 30 years? But Councilmember Kennedy shared that knowing the city requested initially 55 years, he withdrew the question.
Yep. And it seems like we've got that whereas that we can amend if we choose so. The question of, your first question of clarification is the whole thing of, if we pull it, can we retain? I mean, that question, do we still feel like we need clarification for that? Would you like, was that your question? I can't remember, Bobby.
Still, it was like I mean, I'm not gonna hold, like I
Yeah.
said, I'm not gonna hold anything up. If you can, everybody wants to vote on it, fine, but I still like that question answered regardless.
Mhm.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
can I make a motion to table resolution 23-16 until the following meeting? Pending city manager investigation.
That would work, a tabling of it, that would work, clerk, Madam Clerk. Would you recommend that?
Postponing until the next meeting.
Yeah, she said table,
Table is for the current meeting, so postponing until the next meeting.
right? So
Postpone.
Postpone.
Postpone resolution 23-16.
If that works for everybody, does that sound like we could get the final answer and then do a vote in a couple of weeks? That we find out. There might be a few more questions still in the meantime.
I second that.
All those in favor of the motion to postpone until next meeting? Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Keithley,
I,
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas, aye. Okay, motion passed. Okay, going on to on the last resolution of the month. M2, Resolution 23-17, a resolution, City Council of the City of Seldovia, approving joint resolution 23-01, a joint resolution of the councils of the city of the Seldovia Village Tribe and the cities of Homer and Seldovia, respectively, establishing a regional partnership between Homer and Seldovia. City Manager, page 71. Yes, ma'am.
Well, Chair Rojas and Seldovia City Council, this is something that I feel so excited about for the communities of Homer and Seldovia to have the two local municipal governments and the local tribal government coming together on behalf of all of our citizens to figure out how can we work together to provide service that is almost like an emergent property, that when we come together, we can offer something greater than we could have accomplished individually, or how can we support each other in sharing assets or improving services to our community members. And I don't think resolutions like these are very common to see happen, not just in the state of Alaska, but in the nation. So I think it's something where hopefully other communities can take inspiration from to see something like this happen. And in a field that I'm really interested in, it's called collaborative governance or intergovernmental arrangements, where you can have multiple governmental agencies come together. Typically, you'll see things like this happen over things as small as equipment purchases. So one community, they're very common in the state of California. And I don't know if Councilmember Kennedy can speak to this, but some counties or communities will share their fleet equipment and collectively contribute to the maintenance of that equipment because it's more cost effective for their communities to own one set versus duplicate those efforts. And so that way they can maximize the resources of their taxpayers in ways that better serve their citizens. So that's a very small example. The city clerk was looking through a box of wastewater files in the archives and found an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Homer and the city of Seldovia. And what year was that? Was that 1970?
I would have to double check, but it was at least the 80s or 70s.
At least the 80s regarding our wastewater. regarding the disposal of our effluent. And that was something that the city of Homer was willing to work with the city of Soldovia on, because we still have that issue of the inability to remove the effluent out of our septic tanks and public restrooms and have a reliable place to place them. And that's a public health and safety hazard for all people of Soldovia. So the fact that the city of Homer was willing to step in, that's really huge. And in this meeting that the mayor, myself, President Collier, and City Manager Dumichelle of Homer had, it was inspiring to think through all of the different ways our communities work together. And I think I've shared before, Homer and Soldovia have a medicine agreement. I don't know if that's the right way to call it, between our EMS, volunteer fire and EMS departments, where Soldovia doesn't have to buy that large quantity of medicine. We can work with Homer in that regard too. And we've seen this also occur through the broadband expansion and energy expansion project with Homer Electric, where all three of our organizations passed a joint resolution for that. And there's also included in your packet a letter that the Homer mayor wrote back in, let's see, what year, when was that? He penned a letter on behalf of the Homer City Council in February of 2021 to the governor in support of the Alaska Marine Highway System and how it's important for coastal communities like Homer and especially Soldovia. So that was another testament. And these actions can seem symbolic at first, but I think they could have really big lasting impact for the city of Soldovia, Soldovia Village Tribe, and the city of Homer. And I think it's also a way in which we can demonstrate how tribal government can be on the same level of significance as our local municipal governments. So I think that's a way of increasing inclusion and equity in our community. So on page 74 in your packet is a memo that the Homer City Manager wrote, and their city council is talking about this resolution this evening as well. And I just want to share a few sentiments he includes. Over the last 2 years, the Soldovia City Manager and I have been working together to find ways to strengthen the relationships between our cities. As a federally recognized tribe and government that offers services in Homer and Soldovia, Soldovia Village Tribe has also been included in these discussions, as the tribe's participation is vital to ensure our communities work together to represent and serve all citizens with as many opportunities as possible. There are a significant number of social, economic, and environmental linkages between Homer and Soldovia, and we all provide and receive valuable services from each other. I think that in taking a pause, thinking through Soldovia and our history as a community, how we used to be the community that people would come and have babies at. Now Homer kind of takes the lead as being a regional hub, and it's inspiring to see that their willingness to be a participant in these discussions, and we think through the ways that we're connected to them. It doesn't just occur through public safety when Chief Hawkins has to do a prisoner transport, or when fire and EMS has to do a patient transport, or when our harbors work together because there's a derelict vessel trying to moor and we're trying to avoid having that occur, as well as transportation issues in both of our communities. Thinking about healthcare, SVT offers healthcare in both Homer and Soldovia, and that's not something that first-class cities like our cities provide. And they also do transportation through the Soldovia Bay Ferry. So just emphasizing again that there are a lot of crossovers, and after this election, it'll be the first election in which Homer and Soldovia will have the same representation in the House of Representatives as a result of redistricting. I mean, maybe it's been that way in the past, but in recent history, we've had our Kodiak representative, and they've had the Kenai Peninsula representative. So this will be the first time that happening. So I sense a lot of potential. There's a lot of, as the Homer City Manager stated, exciting potentials to look forward to. And with Soldovia's passing of that resolution to do local regional priorities with the Soldovia Village Tribe, Senator Stevens, when he visited Soldovia, emphasized the importance to communicate a unified voice to federal delegation as well as state delegation, so that they know what the community's needs are and can work to help channel funding in a way that's effective and matches both of our communities. So thank you so much for listening. I just think it's a really exciting opportunity, and we've already been doing it informally. So this just kind of recognizes what's in place, and I hope it has lasting impact that outlasts all of us for our communities. Just taking this small step, but making it tangible into the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Council comments? Councilman Kennedy, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, I've seen these type of agreements work really well. And when this first come to light, my hair was standing up on my back of my neck thinking, you know, if we could only just get there, you know? And so I don't want to take up a lot of time, but there are so many interagency agreements down there, and they work so well together. It'd be nice to see us be there too.
Thank you. Anyone else on council comment? Well, I think it's a great thing that we're moving forward with, again, reestablishing or continuing relationships with our neighbors. So I'm in favor of it. Okay, anyone else? Otherwise, we'll go to the public. Is there anyone in the public, Madam Clerk? For resolution 23-17.
I'm not seeing any hands from the public at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Bringing it back to council. What are your wishes?
I move to approve resolution 23-17.
Second,
There
All
you
right.
go.
We have a motion to approve resolution 23-17. Roll call.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Peyton,
aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, motion passed. Going on to item N. City manager's report is in the lay down packet.
Okay.
Take it away.
Thank you for bearing with me here, council. So the city received its debrief of the RAISE grant that we applied for 2022. Myself, the finance officer and harbor master were in attendance as we got the laydown of how we did. And so just to give an overview, there were 936 eligible applications. I'm sure there were more, just not eligible, requesting more than $19 billion in funding. And there was only 2.24 billion available. So they selected 166 projects that had to be split evenly between urban and rural, and they had to achieve diversity in the award. And each of the 50 states received a grant. So there were 4 ratings you could get: highly recommended, recommended, acceptable, and not acceptable. And believe it or not, Soldovia got acceptable, which is incredible considering we did that entire effort, heroic effort in-house. And the information that the USDOT representative gave was that had we had quantitative data on the current condition of our harbor and dock, as well as what the future condition would be with those improvements, we could have gone to a highly recommended rating. And so the grant had 8 categories: safety, environmental sustainability, quality of life, mobility, economic competitive, state of good repair, collaboration, and innovation. And yes, we had to write responses to each of those. And what the state is saying is, hey, we want more data. How many accidents do mariners have using your infrastructure? What safety concerns? Have you had insurance filings? You know, they want more tangible specifics. So my overall impression was that, heck yes, we should apply again. And we have a great chance at it. And they encouraged us to apply again. And one of the things I wasn't sure about was, you know, we kind of took the harbor and Jackaloff Dock and used the road as a connector and called it the Soldovia Marine Regional Transportation Network because RAISE wants a regional impact. And I initially was like, oh, should we have just done Jackaloff or just done the harbor? But based on this debrief meeting, I think we have a strong application, including both. And I think in the future, if we could include the Soldovia Village Tribe Dock in the network, because technically that's part of our Soldovia Marine Regional Transportation Network, I think that would be great. So it's going to happen again in 2023. They're not going to have 2.2 billion. They're going to have 1.5. And 75 million of that is for planning. So we applied for a planning grant. We asked for a little under 1.4 million. The cost will only go up because everything is going up. More services are going up. But I think that if we could even go from acceptable to highly recommended next year and then get funding the year after that, that would be amazing. So our next steps are we need to figure out what questions to ask so that we can generate the data to put in the application so that we have data on current and proposed conditions. And that was one of the things we asked the US DOT rep, and they didn't really have a response for us as yes, the federal government is trying to increase access and equity for smaller communities to get the funding. But what happens if the small community can't afford the people to come up with the data that the small community then uses to apply for the grant? And they didn't really have an answer for that. So I think that there'll be some estimating on what the future conditions will be. But I think that in working with the harbor master and the finance officer and the city clerk, there's a way that we can get more quantitative data for the application. So that's the RAISE application debrief. The chief of police position still hasn't been posted, but it is a top priority, and I'm trying to make it happen the beginning of this week. Since Chief Hawkins is interested in continuing his employment with the city on a temporary basis, I'm working on a new contract with the city attorney so that he can work at an at-will capacity with the city through December, but the term could be shorter. And so it's going to provide the city with flexibility as well as Chief Hawkins with flexibility if circumstances change. Speaking of Jackaloff Bay Dock, initially we told the council we were going to be pursuing the community transportation program, but I think there was something different with, as the city clerk mentioned earlier, nomenclature. It's the CTP is for roads and bridges, and that is funded through surface transportation block grant funding, which I guess is a part of STIP. But because Jackaloff is a dock, we want to go for the Rural Ports and Barge Landings program, which is going to be open spring 2023. So it's on City Clerk Gagel's radar to do that for Jackaloff Bay Dock in the spring. And as an aside, Operator Cameron has been working to get a draft inventory of the Soldovia Safe Roads programs. This is something that former Operator Kennedy helped the city start. And the idea is that with a tool like this, we can then apply for CTP funds in the future for our roads. We can now e-file with the IRS through QuickBooks. So please thank Jan for making that happen. I recently approved the waiver of a little over $5,000 in uncollectible fees through delinquent accounts. Our best practice score through the DEC still remains in the low 50s. So while our operator certification has gone up, our budget score went down because our water and sewer budget is not balanced. That's something that I've been talking to the council about how we don't generate enough revenue to offset operating expenses as well as capital improvements or capital expenses. So I'm planning to talk to the state about that score because a 0 means no budget was developed, and we did have one. And then another way we can improve our score is through compliance. So in 2022, the city had 12 drinking water violations, but I believe that comes from reporting issues. And I know that that's been a priority for Operator Cameron to focus on. And so just a reminder, the best practice score, that's a significant tool for getting funding from the state to help make those improvements. So we want to continue to work on that. The city of Soldovia is pursuing a $5,000 grant from the Homer Foundation for our senior meals program, and we should be finding out about that this week if we got it. If we didn't, we're going to have to discontinue the program or pause the program. But if we did get it, hopefully it'll extend the senior meals program until the state issues their funding again. The city is working with the University of Alaska regarding our Rocky Ridge Trail. So it came to our attention that the permit filed for construction expired in 2016. So we're pursuing a new 5-year permit as well as an option for an easement for the trail. And really quick, so last week I was in Ohio through the Leadership Institute on Race, Equity, and Inclusion program. And that's something that my professional organization, as well as the National Civic League and the Kettering Foundation have put on. And so there were 20 other public servants from across the nation that attended. And it's something that's going for 12 to 18 months. It has interactive learning. You get to network with people and you engage with discussions of key leadership issues surrounding racial equity as well as social equity. And at the end of the program, you have to have a capstone project. And I just wanted to share with the council an insight that I gained when I was there, which was the very important role that local government has in addressing divisiveness amongst our community and bringing people together to make positive change for the common good. So in thinking about ways that the city has enhanced inclusion, back in June, the city adopted a public policy under its Equal Rights Commission concerning discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender expression, and identity. So those are now considered forms of discrimination that would adversely affect the welfare of the community, and they're prohibited. So then it leads to the questions of what are other ways the city can lead the community through difficult discussions that address equity and inclusion? How can we bring more citizens to the table to address community needs? Thinking about social equity, two really big standout points for Soldovia are the census. The US Census says we're an area of persistent poverty, and the Denali Commission says we're a distressed community. So what does that mean? How could we fix that? Back in 2019, 2020, when the city issued a survey that got 134 responses, we have a low to moderate income index of 62.5%. So that's pretty high. I think the threshold to get the block grant funding for this building is over 50%. So how can we address that disparity? And so I'm thinking for my capstone project, developing a review sheet so that when we do projects as a city, it takes into account getting feedback from the public as well as SVT, and also laying out ways that we address those disparities. So something I've heard the council talk about a lot is there are so few people that live here year round. And so that's where the burden of increasing taxes really hurts people. Yet there are other people that have Soldovia as a second home community. And so that creates this disparity too, with limited housing and limited jobs. And there's a lot of pressure placed on year-round residents. So what are ways that we as a city can figure out how to address that in a manner that supports the people that keep the lights on in Soldovia year-round, but also reflects the makeup of our community because it's unique. So I hope that that's something that can help the city in the future. And even when I'm not at the city, I'll still be working on that just as a project, an administrator project, and I'll share what I come up with at the end of that journey. So the city will still get something from me after that, but I really thank you for your support and my participation. It's just a 2.5-hour meeting every month basically now, and it'll culminate in presenting in Texas at the end of next year, sharing what I came up with. So I hope I can make the community proud of, and council has already done so much to make the community proud, and thinking through those issues of equity and inclusion in our community and how we can see that come more to be. So thank you. I'm here for questions.
Does the council have any questions for city manager for a report or comments? As always, an incredible report. You do so much. Thank you. Bobby.
I have a comment. Good work. Thank you for that report.
Speaking of good work, the city got a card from the Five family that's in here, just saying, city workers, just in case no one told you today, you are awesome and valued in this community. And for staff that do a lot of invisible work, that means a lot, even just to have one family say good job. So I know the council is really appreciative of staff, but to get it from the public as well is great.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, no questions? Okay. All right, moving on to item O, informational items not requiring any action. We got lots happening. November 4th at 3 p.m., special city council meeting, first review of city manager candidates, possible executive session. Item 2, November 8th, general election, get out there and vote. 03, November 9th at 6 PM, community meeting workshop. City service discussion and strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats, SWOT, exercise facilitated by Angela Ingelkiss at the Alaska Municipal League with a light dinner provided. Is that at the SOC? Is that where that's being held? Okay. Item 4, November 10th, 3 PM, the City Council annual retreat, review results of the 2022 citizen survey and set council priorities for the calendar year 2022. Thank you. Facilitated again, but last one. Okay, item 5, November 15th, 2022, newly elected officials training with the State of Alaska local governmental specialist Tricia Sullivan, time to be announced. 06, we have the November 28th, 2022 regular meeting will only be set as needed for resolution 22-17. So there will or will not be a meeting, depends on.
At this time, there is not
Okay.
a meeting scheduled, but if something pertinent came up, or as will be listed at the next, or in the next two items, there is a possibility of special meetings occurring in November for city manager candidate interviews, so.
Okay. And 07, November 14th, regular meeting with the city manager Freelander's last regular scheduled meeting. We will miss you. And item 8, special meeting to conduct city managers candidate interviews for November possibly. What's going on, folks? Okay, item P, executive session, we have none. Item Q, we have council and mayor comments for items not on the agenda. Mr. Kennedy, any comments for tonight?
Oh, just thank you. And one thing, a little note about the crew, the city crew. This year they have done a tremendous amount of work and brush clearing, and it shall not go unnoticed. I've really noticed that there has been a lot of work done. All the lots, they've just steady work. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Kennedy, or I'm sorry, Swick
No comment.
and Peyton.
Thanks, staff. Lots of work. I always love the information. Guys do a good job.
Keith Lee,
No comment.
okay. Sweat,
Yeah, again, thanks for all your hard work, all the information you given us. And I also wanted to tell Jordan, and I just spaced it out. I thought that the guys are doing a really good job with things around town, and it's noticeable. So kudos to them.
okay. Well, thank everyone for tonight's participation, all the hard work that comes out of the city office and from this table. Okay, we have, yahoo, out of here. We have our next meeting, regular meeting being November 14th, 6 PM. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second that.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.